I'm Paul Thorne. Welcome to my forge. I've just been forging up some leaves for a sculpture that I'm making. So let me turn the forge off so we can talk. It's pretty loud in here. That's better. I'm Paul Thorne. I've lived here, our family's lived here in Anacortes for 32 years, and I've been a full-time blacksmith for 37 years. This is my calling in life. I started out life as an engineer, but when I was 33, I discovered I was really a blacksmith. So then the fun began. This whole business of metalwork goes back a long way. We'll talk about history a little bit later, but and we talk about it in the senior college class that I teach. But the history of metals is absolutely fascinating. You can make weapons, you can make tools, you can make utensils, you can make artwork, you can invent things. It's just a wonderful path, and it's a path mankind has been on for at least 10,000 years. So let me show you the kind of work I do and the output of what's come out of here for all these years. In my shop, I have the luxury of having a nice big shop, and sometimes it gets crowded, but with tools and projects and students, but it's just a wonderful place to spend my time. So if you come in the gallery here, I'll just show you what's paid the bills all these years. The one really clean place in my whole shop. And metalwork that's here, even though most of it seems quite delicate and whimsical even from an art point of view, it's made of iron, forged iron. It has about a 50,000 pounds per square inch tensile strength. So pretty much everything you see in here is virtually indestructible. These are examples really that I show architects and interior designers and students what is possible from an art point of view. And now that I'm getting to be an old man and my back hurts, I make smaller things like these plates instead of big sculptures. These plates, you know, they're a forged plate. I make them and I get them hot about 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, and I pound this metal into a shape of a plate. And then once it's cooled, I carve a design in it. And then the last thing I do, I polish the plates and add heat back to it. And all these colors you see are strictly done with heat. And when you're all done, it's basically indestructible. And what these are about is to show people how metalwork progresses. When you're taking on a metal project, where do you start? It's not like you go to the store and you just buy one off the shelf. There is no off the shelf. There's a sequence to everything, and that's where the choreography of metalwork comes in. You have to figure out all the steps, and the kind of people who can do smithing, are very organized people. Typically, we can actually see what we're going to be making in our minds in 3 dimensions. So then we walk backwards from that 3-dimensional final image into each step that might be required. So these are some, and then this area here, this is kind of my corporate headquarters. I have these old filing cabinets which are no longer needed by the world out there, but I need them for storing my tools, equipment, materials, extra pieces I make. When I'm making things for folks, if they need, say, 100 leaves for a tree or a wreath or something, I make 150 of them, and then we pick the best ones, and those are the ones they get. I don't expect people to pay for my learning curve. And you can always use extra leaves for something. So this area here, these show some different ways how you make flowers. We've been on the History Channel. We've made axes and Viking tools, that sort of thing. Throughout the history of metalwork, there's about 7 basic shapes and forms that a smith learns. And those 7 or 8 shapes are things that you can make big, make little, combine with one of the other 7 shapes. And once you learn these, you can make basically anything, which is another very exciting thing about this work. If you can imagine it, you truly can make it. And the only thing stopping you from making it is your own intellect and your own skill. Because we make all our own tools. There's just a tremendous potential there to do things you never could do before. Now we're going to go into the forging area, and this is where I do the dance. This is the choreography studio here. And I do everything from standing right here. And from here I can pull work out of my fire. I can use this anvil, which you have to admit is the most beautiful anvil you've ever seen, 660 pounds. But it basically is a workbench for a blacksmith. And my hammer, this represents the unstoppable force that hits hot metal and pushes it into shape. And the anvil is the immovable object. And the hot metal is caught between, and the hot metal moves and forms. And depending on my skill level, it evolves into what I see in my head. So I do small, delicate work here. And if I need massive movement of metal, I just pivot right around here. And I have this thing called a power hammer, which this is a modern version. It's from about 1910. But the Romans had power hammers powered by slaves on treadmills and water wheels also. And it basically hits with 100+ pounds twice a second. And then this hammer is something that I built that allows me, every time I slam my foot down, to hit as hard as this hammer hits, but very slowly, so I have very good control. And between these, light blows, very controlled. I can make just about anything. All the hand tools, the hammers, are all handmade here because you simply can't buy the things you need. In our culture, things are made to be a one-size-fits-all, pretty much, especially in the tool area. And they get away with it because not that many people use tools anymore. But when people use tools to make a living, tools were custom. And they usually fit each craftsperson that works. Okay, on that far end of the shop down there is my treasures of metal. I have copper, bronze, and iron. And those are the miracle metals that have allowed us to build civilization and are the subject of the classes I teach. I teach a class at the senior college, 2 classes. One is the history of metals, which goes back 10,000 years approximately, and the ways metals build civilization. And then I teach another class on the history of tools, which goes back probably millions of years, certainly hundreds of thousands of years. Iron is a basic material on the periodic chart, Fe. It's right about in the middle of the chart. And it's something we ignore today. You know, you go on a construction site and you see a bunch of scraps of old rebar, or you go to the gas station and there's a junk pile in back and a bunch of old leaf springs and brake drums and this kind of thing. And you drive along the road and see an old car spring or muffler or whatever. We don't value iron at all. We throw it away. Iron is the miracle material of the universe. Even the crudest piece of iron is between 40 and 50,000 pounds per square inch tensile and shear strength, compared to wood that's well under 1,000 pounds strength. So as a metal, as a material to work with, it is vastly superior. The next thing is you can change its shape to suit your needs and use that tremendous strength just using heat and pounding it with a hammer. And what's really amazing, after you've pounded it into shape, just like clay, it's stronger than it was when you started. When you pound it, you're refining the grain structure of the material. And you're lining the grain structure up just like grain structure in wood. You know, and you furniture builders know that you want to always use the grain structure to make the piece stronger. Well, that's what happens in forging. You pound it into shape. The shape you pounded in, i.e. the force you took to push it there, is the shape of the grain. So typically it's between 10 and 40% stronger than it was when you started. The whole field of metals changed the way people looked at the physical world. It allowed them to take steps beyond stone, and it's never stopped. We continue to develop now. This last area is an engraving area, and I can make fine designs and carvings on the pieces that I shape by heat. Once they're cool, then I can do fine work on top of them. Engraving goes back at least to Egyptian times. The history of smithing is always awes me. It's not an area that there has been a lot of work done. Academics are able to track metals from the Bronze Age on, because that's also when writing started. But they missed the previous age, which is copper. In the last number of years, I've had the pleasure of putting together some history based on my knowledge as a smith. And by the way, we use the word blacksmith because ironwork, when you heat it up and then it cools, is black. And we use the word smith because I smite things, I hit things. So there's coppersmiths, tinsmiths, goldsmiths, you know, on and on. So we have a timeline here that goes up to today. Here we are, 2020. Each of these increments is 1,000 years. Here's the time of Christ, and then we go back. This is the founding of civilizations, different civilizations in 3500 BC, that period of time when the first cities, writing started to develop. But smithing goes back a long way, and this upper line is the overall timeline, but it also represents the Stone Age, the end of the Stone Age. So here comes the Neolithic Stone Age up to here, and in about 5500 BC, other things start to happen, and the Stone Age is dwindling. And the Iron Age comes about because people learned, the same people that made the stone tools, highly skilled people, they had the same brain size we did, the same imagination, but their material was somewhat flawed. They could make a very sharp knife out of a stone, but it would break. And then you got to make another one and another one. So you spend a lot of time making tools. And so one of these stone people figured out, he picked up a piece of copper on the ground. You could find copper laying on the ground in those days, and he pounded it while it was cold, and it made a tool. And he could put a sharp edge on it and work, and of course, being copper, it got dull pretty quick, but it did not break. And that was a huge breakthrough. And then people who had found tin, which was previously a completely wasted material, they didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't beautiful enough to be like silver. It wasn't strong enough to do, you know, make a hammer out of. But they somehow, the two got melted together, copper and tin. And it made this amazing material called bronze. And bronze is like a factor of 5 stronger than copper. And so the Bronze Age goes along for about 2,000 years, and it's an interesting thing. When the Bronze Age started, which was about 3,000 BC or 5,000 years ago, that's when we understand civilization starting. That's when Sumer developed, Mesopotamia, the first people that eventually became the Babylonians, the Egyptians, all start when the Bronze Age kicks off. The Bronze Age allowed them to do that. Anyway, we go along, and about 1000 BC, the Iron Age kicks in, and all the technology to use iron was developed during the Bronze Age and the Copper Age, and it was a relatively straightforward step, but the difference was iron was many times stronger than bronze and was a truly superior material. And what happened in copper and bronze in terms of civilization happened in spades with iron. And I encourage everyone who takes smithing or reads about it, just think about, you're on the leading edge of the parade of this path that led to civilization. It's an amazing story. I obviously do metal work, and I love doing it. And my hope for you is that you find something in life that's similar, that you can love to do and commit your life to. Not just something that has a lot of prestige and makes a lot of money. If you follow that track, you'll never get to being happy. If you find what you love to do and do it and commit yourself, you will. If you want to be a really good ceramic person or a textile person or a blacksmith, you have to give it 100%. You have to love doing it, and you have to commit to it. It's a form of life, but you can do it. And I just, you know, we can do this in America. You can't do it in most places in the world. So you might just look into some of these they're considered unusual, but overall, from the overview of our civilization, they're not unusual. You can do those things.